I can present these ideas and start and ask questions and start those debates and inspire people to maybe engage, in a way and think about their own position in the world and stuff like that. And so that, for me, that was a really heartwarming thing that I found out about doing the film and the one-man show. Was like, oh wow, this is the thing that I can actually do. So it's not that I am on the front line at any demonstration, I suppose, but I am part of a movement. I feel as though I'm part of a movement again.
I'm Colin Burrows, and this is the Woodstein Media Podcast, Episode 11. This podcast is produced on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Anishinaabe, and Odawa peoples. On Episode 11, I chat with Dunstan Bruce. Whether you like it or not, his voice has probably been stuck in your head at one time or another over the past 25 years. As a member of the anarcho-pop cabaret troupe, Chumbawamba, he was part of an accidental hit in the song Tub Thumping, which you will no doubt recognize by its earworm of a chorus about getting knocked down and getting back up again. I'm not sure what people believe band members who achieve a single major hit song do for the rest of their lives, but the members of Chumbawamba have achieved a lot in the 40 or so years since they began creating together. Dunstan's recent work includes a documentary film, I Get Knocked Down, a one-man show, Am I Invisible Yet? And he's also been back on the stage performing with his new band, Interrobang. The common theme cutting through all of this work is a question many of us can relate to as we age. Where do we fit in, and how can we continue to be relevant? During the podcast, you will hear a few songs from Interrobang's self-titled 2018 album, released on All the Madman Records. This podcast and Woodstein Media are independently produced journalism that you can support through Patreon or by donating through PayPal at Wood-stein.ca. That's WOOD-STEIN.ca. Thanks for your interest and support. If you enjoy this podcast, you can support it by listening to more episodes and liking, sharing, subscribing, or reviewing them.
No danger of that happening anytime soon. I'm angry, still angry after all these years. I'll never calm down, never, ever. I really don't care if sincerity's uncool. Now is the time to stop playing the fool. I'm sick of being pushed and hushed and crushed. I've had enough of standing in the middle of the road. No danger of that happening anytime soon. I'm angry, still angry after all these years. I'll never calm down, never, ever. Have you seen the film Network from '76? When Howard Field delivers that passionate speech, he says, I don't have to tell you, things are bad. He says, all I know is you've got to get mad. He says, I'm mad as hell, not gonna take this anymore. I'm mad as hell, not gonna take this anymore. I'm mad as hell, not gonna take this anymore. I'm mad as hell, not gonna take this anymore. I'm mad as hell, not gonna take this anymore. I'm mad as hell, not gonna take this anymore. I'm mad as hell, not gonna take this anymore. I'm mad as hell, not gonna take this anymore. anymore. Mad as hell, I'm gonna take this 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 anymore. Mad as hell, I'm not gonna take this anymore.
That was Mad as Hell by Interrobang, available from allthemadmenrecords.bandcamp.com.
Okay. Hey, how are you, Colin? Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm great. For people who might only know you as, the tub thumping guy, introduce yourself as you would like to be known.
Oh, fuck. I'm not usually afforded that opportunity, really. What am I? I have no idea what I am. I don't know. That's a difficult question in a way. Because weirdly in the in the film, I describe myself as a washed out, rinsed out, retired radical. But that's how I saw myself, I guess, like 10 years ago. So now I feel as though I'm out the other side of that, but I would never know how to describe myself in positive terms. That's really difficult. I usually let other people do that, I guess. How do you describe yourself? I don't know. That's a pretty difficult thing to do.
I don't know. I
find it easy to like criticize myself. That's really easy.
Yeah. I've asked people that, and they've usually just said what they do, but I guess they really don't describe themselves in that a lot of the time. So I guess you're making it more of an existential question than I was thinking it was.
Yeah. I'm making it hard for myself, really, aren't I?
Yeah.
I should have just said, "Oh, I'm just a." I always tell the story in Q&As where I say this thing where I've never. Oh no, it's in the one man show as well. Actually, there's this whole thing about how I've never described myself as a musician. I've always felt as though, even in the 80s, where you could put in your passport what your occupation was, I never put musician. I always put entertainer because I thought I wasn't. I was a bit of a charlatan as far as music was concerned. So I've never defined myself as a musician as such, but I've always thought of myself as somebody who is creative and has found ways around, being able to express myself in such a way, but without applying a particular label to it. So I suppose I've done lots of stuff along the way, like whether that's be in a band or whether that's make documentaries or whether that's make art or write or do a one-man show. Whatever it is, I've quite often defined myself by what I actually produce in a way, and so would never think of to say that, oh yeah, I'm a poet or I'm an artist and that, but I do those things, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. Usually other people tell you what you are, don't they? Usually other people.
Yeah. That's most of the time.
Yeah.
Well, I actually wanted to start with Interrobang. There was something I heard you saying on someone else's podcast, I think it was, last year. You talked about getting back into music through Interrobang, and one of the things you mentioned was that sense of community that comes with it. And I've felt that myself. So there's a parallel there. And I mean, I'm not religious, but when I go to concerts, or I've performed in my life too, and when I'm doing that, there's almost that sense of community is almost reverence in some way, or I don't know what the right word is for it, but what I'm asking you is to describe how that has been going back to that. Like, I mean, Interrobang, I guess, started about, 10, 15 years ago?
10 years ago, maybe, yeah, 8 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
The thing that I felt when we started doing Interrobang again, when I started Interrobang, was that that community of people who were organising those shows or coming to those shows were partly the same people who were around in the 80s who were doing similar stuff. And a lot of people had stayed within that movement. And because of everything that happened to Chumbawamba when we, signed to a major label, had a hit single, all that sort of stuff, for a while it felt as though, I sort of felt as though I wasn't welcome in that world, or that I wasn't part of that world anymore. What I found with Interrobang was that those people who were involved in that world were incredibly welcoming and were just wanted to help with the band or put the band on or allowed me to be a part of that community again, whereas there was a time when because of entering the mainstream, that a lot of people rejected Chumbawamba. So that was a really lovely feeling to feel part of something. But then when I started doing the one-man show, we would do a Q&A at the end of the one-man show. And what happened was that the Q&A almost became as important as the show, because what the Q&A did was it gave everybody in the audience who'd come along to the show a chance to talk about how they felt about the world, or what they thought they could do to change the world, or how they fit in, or if they felt invisible, and how they countered that feeling of becoming invisible. So it became a discussion, and that just felt like it was really, really important. And people took something away from that as much as they took something away from the show. It was as though the show was just the starting point. The performance was just one part of the whole evening. And that what it meant was that we were able to create this sort of community within the theatre where, people were able to talk about how they felt about the state of the world and their position in it. And I thought that was a really positive thing, and a really helpful thing. And that it was providing something more than just entertainment. It meant the show was doing something more than just entertaining somebody for an hour. So I thought that was a really important part of what we were trying to do.
Okay. Sticking with Interrobang, the content of the music in that last album was fantastic. I've been driving around working, listening to it a lot. So it may not be shoving the same dogma down people's throats that early Chumbawamba was, but 30, 40 years on, it captures the same sort of anger and frustration, I feel, with a good dose of humor in there and, wisdom of age. But does it feel like you came full circle in some ways musically, or is it very different?
No, it does. No, it does. It does, yeah. I mean, when me and Griff started Interrobang, I basically said to Griff, look, I've written a load of words. I need somebody to create the music for me to be able to do, to do these words. And he said, I can do that. And he said, how do you want it to sound? What do you want it to be? What could it be? And so we created our own mood board, basically. And those bands on that mood board were largely sort of like, that post-punk sort of bands that you can hear in the music that we do. And so Griff brought certain bands to it and I brought certain bands to it, and then we found a way of what he was actually doing anyway with his guitar for it to all work. And then obviously Harry got involved, who's former Chumbawamba drummer, so it was kind of inevitable that it would have some sort of early Chumbawamba element to it, I guess. And and I can't sing. I can do certain things. I know how to, I know how to do, I know how to be in a band, and I know how to perform, and I know how to say words and all that sort of thing, but I can't sing. So we had to work around that as well. We had to use, what each of us brought to it. And what was really liberating in that process was that we let each member let the other express themselves how they wanted to, how they wanted each person had the responsibility to do their bit, to the best, to the best of their ability, or how they felt was the best way of expressing themselves, doing the thing that they were doing. And so we found a way of being able to do that worked for the three of us, which was obviously a completely different experience to Chumbawamba, which was 8 people, and us trying to make music that incorporated everybody and everybody's different ideas. I felt with Interrobang, because it's quite minimalist what we're doing. It was a very simple process for us to find our sound in a way, and particularly because we had this thing that Griff was doing with guitars, where he was looping them and playing stuff over the top of them. That sort of defined what we were gonna sound like anyway. And I still listen to that, that post-punk, those post-punk bands, and I still find them, I still enjoy that music. So it was quite, and that music has come around full circle as well, I guess. There's bands who are doing that sort of thing today. So it's still a sound that resonates, that's still popular and doesn't sound. So to me, it doesn't sound dated either, because I think, as much as we had all those influences that we brought into Interrobang, we didn't want Interrobang to be nostalgic. We still wanted it to be forward-looking and to be now. And we kind of caught a wave in a way of that, of bands that came after us, who became really popular doing that sort of thing as well. So it was it felt like we were like quite like part of a zeitgeist in a way when we first started. So that was really encouraging as well, that sort of thing had come full circle.
Now I'd like to go into the film, which there's 2 intriguing points that I've heard talked about with it. The fact that although it deals with Chumbawamba and the history somewhat, it's not like a regular Talking Heads type movie. And the second point is that I've heard you say it's kind of a contemporary movie too, because it deals with self-discovery for you. So can you talk about those 2 aspects of it?
Yeah. So when I first approached Sophie with the idea of making, Sophie Robinson is the co-director of the film. When I first approached her with the idea of wanting to make a film about what can a political band do when they enter the mainstream, if they are given a platform, can you change anything? Can you influence people? Can you have it? Can you make a difference? I was sort of interested in answering those sort of questions with what happened, and using Chumbawamba as the example for that. When Sophie got involved, she said that the film can't just be this nostalgic piece. We've got to, we need a contemporary element within the film. We can't just tell that story and looking backwards. She wasn't interested in doing that. She wanted to talk about the now as well. And so that's where the idea came about the film being more my story than being just the story of Chumbawamba, which also was useful in the fact that it meant that I wasn't trying to tell 8 people's stories, because everybody else in Chumbawamba has their own version of events and has their own story. And when we decided that I wasn't going to try and do that, that was a really liberating moment where we thought, right, we're going to tell your story. Where, and so at the beginning of the film, I talk about being stuck, or I'm struggling, those sort of ideas, and I don't know where my place is in the world anymore. And so the film becomes an exploration of that. And we use the backstory of Chumbawamba to help propel the story forward, to talk about, well, what do you do now? You've done that once. Can you do that again? Or do you approach it in a different way the second time round? And so the story develops into an idea that, I'm not going to be playing at Madison Square Gardens any day soon. I'm going to do it in a different way. And there's something about, again, going back to that idea of community, there's something about that, playing to smaller crowds and finding your people, in a way, that's just as powerful and is just as important. So the film tells that story, but in the way, and Sophie also said this very pertinent thing where she said, look, let's make the film like follow the ethos of Chumbawamba, which was to never make the same record twice. There was always an idea in Chumbawamba though that we always wanted to do something different. With each record, we would have new ideas and new ways of expressing our politics or our music and that. And I think with the film, we tried to do that as well, where we didn't want to just do the same scenes over and over and over to tell the story. We wanted to be inventive, and we wanted to be take risks with what we did with the film, and we wanted to have a lot of fun making the film. And so I think that comes through in some of the scenes where, it's just obvious we're having a lot of fun with telling the story, whether it's telling the story of Chumbawamba or it's telling the story of what happened to me, after Chumbawamba and what I did next, and, getting Interrobang together and, where that's left me now. So all those sort of things fed into, the filmmaking process. So we never really had a script for the film. We didn't know what the film was going to be really until we got into the edit suite and started working out what helped in telling the story and what were the strong points of the stuff that we'd done and what didn't work. So being in the edit was a really creative process as well. We were trying stuff and then chucking it away and then trying new ideas and trying to decide how we tell the story. Is it linear story? Does it jump about all over the place? But, we get our message across of what we want to say with, where I am now sort of thing. And so all that creative process was really good fun. We had a really good time in making it. Once we took the step to make the film that we wanted to make, which was a bit of a double-edged sword in the way, because we didn't have any funding for it. So we didn't have any sort of exec producers breathing down our necks saying, it's got to be this or it's got to be that. But not having that meant that we could make the film that we wanted to make. And that was a really liberating process.
In that self-discovery side that you had through the movie, I was wondering whether, you probably had positive self-discoveries in there. Was there moments too of kind of, I don't know how to describe it, maybe like a facepalm and I can't believe I did that sort of, or I was part of that, and how growth can happen from those sorts of moments? Were those moments in there too?
Yeah. I mean, there's some things we do in the film that are just like, they're slightly excruciating in a way, because I think some of the critiques of the film that we have is that it's extraordinary that it's a film that doesn't just make out how brilliant I am. The whole premise of the film is that we have this other character called Babyhead, who's based on the album cover of Tub Thumper, and is my alter ego in a way, or is a version of me who is like the ghost of Christmas past, who follows me around everywhere, berating everything I do and giving me a really hard time. And so what his role is to question everything that I did and am doing, so that it isn't just an uncritical look at what Chumbawamba did or achieved. And it isn't just it isn't a hagiography, and it isn't just an attempt just to say, look how great I am. Because I think there's too many music documentaries that probably already do that. And what do you learn? I don't know what you necessarily learn from that. And I think we wanted to answer questions about middle age and activism and creativity outside of the confines of being in a pop band. So the film isn't just saying, isn't this great what we did? The film is asking, using Babyhead, is asking all those questions about whether what we achieved had any value and was it worth it and all stuff like that.
Are you ready, people?
That was Interrobang asking, "Are you ready, people?" You can also get that song on their self-titled album from allthemadmanrecords.bandcamp.com. The conversation with Dunstan moved on to how people in North America can view the film. It is available on Apple TV and iTunes. There will be a link in the description so you can rent or purchase this fascinating Chumbawamba documentary psychological art film of middle-aged self-discovery. I guess when I saw it, I Get Knocked Down as a coming of middle-aged film? No, dealing with middle-aged film? I don't know. It's very interesting, but it also deals with the history of Chumbawamba and the new bands, and even bands that Dunstan has just discovered recently, younger bands that are part of the community he's been talking about.
I've absolutely no idea what they're actually doing with the film at the moment and where it's going to appear. Okay. At the moment in the UK, we're in the middle of a theatrical release.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've been watching that happen.
That's been going really well. And I've got another screening tonight in Brighton where I live. But that's been going really well and has generated a lot of, positive responses to the film. But we haven't got the funds to go and do a theatrical tour in the US, unfortunately, as much as I'd love to do that. So we're hoping that it's going to turn up on a platform at some point, but I don't know what that platform is going to be.
Okay. Well, I'm waiting eagerly. Am I Invisible Yet? You've already talked about it a little bit, the one-man show. It's a companion piece for the film. How did that come about, and how does that companion piece bit work?
Yeah, so when we finished the film, we finished editing it in the second or third lockdown, I can't remember which. I said to Sophie, I said, "Do you think we'll make another film together again?" And she just went, "Nah." And I was like, "Why not? Why won't we? I thought this one had worked out all right." And she was like, "Well, look, I think you should be in front of the camera, or you should be on stage. You shouldn't be behind a camera. I think you should be performing." And so I'd already started writing something based on a set of lyrics that I had that was going to be the second Interrobang album, but Griff couldn't get it together to come up with any new musical ideas for a second album. So I started developing these words into a one-man show. And so Sophie said, "Well, why don't you just make that an hour long or whatever, and I'll direct you in a one-man show." And we both thought, Sophie had worked in theatre a long time ago and was keen to work in theatre again. And it was something I'd never done before. So I was really excited about the idea of trying to do something new and not be in a gig environment, but be in a theatre environment, because I've never done that before. So I developed this, I wrote this show that was about an hour long. I started performing it. And ironically, what happened is that Sophie became an integral part of it, because it's like a sort of a multimedia show where we use slides and music. And so it combines all different elements and prose. And so she became as an important part of it as me. I can't do the show without her now, which is weird, because I'd started off thinking that if you do a one-man show, that the only person you can just go out and do a one-man show. And I soon realized that I couldn't. I needed somebody else to help me do it. Anyway, so that. But what we did with the one-man show is we cut out the majority. It's not about Chumbawamba, the one-man show. We wanted it to be universal in that it's just an idea about becoming invisible as you get older, and what can you do about that. And so I'm telling my story of how I tried to do something about that. So it has some similar themes that are in the film are also in the one-man show, but we've taken it, we've expanded on those ideas. It hopefully speaks to a much larger audience rather than just Chumbawamba fans, which is again what I was talking about earlier. That idea of creating a community was that in doing the one-man show and then doing a Q&A at the end, that really helped the whole connecting with the audience thing in a way, and that we weren't just turning up somewhere, doing the show and then disappearing. So that was a really positive thing.
When you've been speaking recently in interviews, you always mention that you're still wanting to change the world. How have your personal politics grown, adapted, or outright changed since the early days of Chumbawamba?
I think a lot of my core politics are probably very similar. They haven't changed that much, really. I think it's just me finding a way of expressing my own politics, or me being a part of this continuum of dissent, I suppose it is. And so I think what I've learned over the years is that maybe the thing that I can do best is to be a catalyst for things, or to be, doing the film and doing the one-man show have sort of taught me in a way that that's the thing I can do. And that's the way that I can be part of a voice of dissent or a voice for change, is that I can present these ideas and start and ask questions and start those debates and inspire people to maybe engage, in a way, and think about their own position in the world and stuff like that. And so that, for me, that was a really heartwarming thing that I found out about doing the film and the one-man show. Was like, oh wow, this is the thing that I can actually do. So it's not that I am on the front line at any demonstration, I suppose, but I am part of a movement. I feel as though I'm part of a movement again, or that I'm engaging with like-minded people, and that we all have a different role to play in that movement, and we don't all have to be doing exactly the same thing, I guess. And so I found that really liberating for me, was like realizing that this is who I was and this is what I could do. And I felt confident about that. So that was really powerful for me.
So you're like Dunstan Bruce, the catalyst or the muse for the movement.
Yeah, but if I'd said that at the beginning of the interview, it would have sounded really weird, I think, without giving it all context, which we have now given it. It's sort of, it doesn't feel as wanky as it might have done if I'd said it right at the beginning. But yeah, I guess that sort of thing. Yeah, it's weird because I think I suppose it's quite meta, that idea that I ask in the question, the idea of what can I do, to find my place in the world again and stop myself becoming invisible. And I guess what I do for that is I make a film, and I do a one-man show, and it's those things that have helped me not feel invisible, or have helped me feel as though I am making a difference, or that I am part of a movement for change.
Oh, and my next question you already answered because it was about, well, I'll ask it because I'm not sure you came right out and said where you feel most comfortable, but I was going to ask about, there's the one-man show in Interrobang where you're performing, and then you're also filmmaking. And I'll just ask straight out, where do you feel most comfortable, performing or behind the camera?
Oh, performing. Definitely performing, yeah. Interrobang did a show last year in Poland, of all places, where we'd screened the film there a year or so ago at a film festival, and then we went back to do the one-man show, and then we went back again to do an Interrobang gig. And the Interrobang gig felt like that was the thing that was really me, that I felt most at ease with, or that I really felt confident about. Look, I can do this. I know what I'm doing, and I know how to do it. And it's the thing that I have least doubt about. It's the thing that I feel most confident with, and it's the thing that, I just love performing with Griff as well. Having him by my side on stage is just really, really powerful for me and meaningful. And I think because Sophie had encouraged me to perform rather than be behind the camera, I think I totally took that on board, and I kind of realized that what she was saying was right. And I knew, as much as I would joke about the fact that she doesn't want to make another film with me, I totally understood what she meant by that I should be on stage performing. And that's the thing, yeah. So that's the thing I enjoy doing more than anything, definitely, yeah.
In a lot of your recent interviews, and I've heard you mentioning the idea of celebrating small victories. So moving away from the early Chumbawamba large-scale sweeping approach on a lot of issues like animal rights and all that early stuff where it was big, you guys were just yelling and screaming about big issues, to celebrating small victories. How has that approach helped you in life, I guess, really? It's probably a lesson a lot of us can learn from. So
I think it has helped massively, because once you get out, once you stop thinking that there's going to be a revolution any day soon, it so really helps you focus on the things that maybe you can do and the changes that you can make. I've never really had a picture of what that world was going to look like anyway, but seeing, the small changes that you can make, or how you can just change one person's life, or you can inspire one person to maybe go and do something, that's positive. I think those small things just add up. I think there's a quote it's a Howard Zinn quote. Let me just find it. I've got it up in my bathroom, so I see it every day. Oh no, here it is on the wall. Right, it says, we don't have to engage in grand heroic actions to participate in the process of change. Small acts, when multiplied by millions of people, can transform the world. So that was a quote that I found, this Howard Zinn quote. I thought that nailed it in a way. Being able to try and change the world in a small way, or just be a part of, various communities, or was as useful as, thinking, right, because it's so easy just to shout, about, we want the world to change. We want an anarchist, society. We want this and that, and for that to never happen. Whereas, you realize there's lots of people who are making real change in the world, quietly and efficiently. And I just thought, why do I have to make such a big noise about it? But sometimes the two things can combine really nicely, and I think that's what I was hoping for, was to have an influence on people's. Sometimes it's just about their well-being, having an influence on their well-being or their mental health, which is something that I think was ignored, largely ignored in the 70s and 80s and the 90s even, and then once you realize that, those things are really important to people, then I think you can play a different role as well, in trying to make the world a better place. I mean, that's all I'm trying to do, is make the world a slightly better place, really,
Thanks for listening, and thanks to Dunstan for the interview. Check the description wherever you are listening to this for links to more information, or visit Wood-stein.ca. That's WOOD-STEIN.ca. You can support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Colin Burrows. Like, share, comment, follow, and support Woodstein Media and this podcast, and have a wonderful day. Now, just for the hell of it, I'm going back to an early 80s Chumbawamba demo so that Boff and Dunst can tell you to stop pussyfooting around.
Stop! Pussyfooting around! I've got garbage catching bodies in your backyard! These pussyfooting men, the cattle on crap! Then stop that fucking yakking where you're watching your throat! And you fucking swallow it! You fucking swallow it! I'll fucking start speaking out! Lieutenant and Pearson, which we accept! Along with a bird, it's like a Kentucky Fried Chick! The thought disturbs you, have a coke and a smile! I think the world is staying with running for a while! And you'll not give a shit! Bang! Fucking American Yankee Fried Chick! Round the taxi, out of you, don't win! Uncle Sam is counting bodies in your backyard. You think Murphy says his bed, the Colonel was black. Stop the fucking yakking where you're blind and you're wrong. So much steps in it. Stop! Hand off to the fucking round. If you feel the edge of crime, then stop in a fucking fight. Or just sit and accept it.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing this.
All right, Colin.
This is amazing.
Okay, keep
All
me
right.
posted and I'll send you all that stuff as well. Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay, see you later, man. Bye.
See Bye.